Hello. This is a very short, simple concept, but what we're going to be going over right now. Weber's basis of political power. Okay, real simple model. Max Weber was a German sociologist, 1864 to 1920. He's also considered to be the father of the study of public administration. So for any of you who might be sociology majors, I'm sure you've heard his name before. So when we talk about Max Weber in this model, it really focuses a lot on legitimacy, promoting legitimacy of the government, to the people. All right. So firstly, tradition. Things become more legitimate over time. Just think about this for a second. The way I've always talked about this concept, if you haven't figured out here in North Carolina, we kind of live in the Bible Belt. We've got more churches on street corners than we do schools, right? Well, the little church I go to, 1883, which isn't unusual for around here. But think about this for a second. Do I really think that when I show up to church on Sunday, the church doors are going to be closed? No, not unless we have some freak snowstorm and they just cancel services for Sunday. You know why? I've got 100 some odd years of tradition of that church being open and there, being a part of the community. So it doesn't really cross my mind whether or not it's going to be there or not. Now, if I go back in the time machine and it were 1890s, I went down to the church on a random Sunday morning and the doors were locked and the place was closed, it might not surprise me a whole lot. Okay? So things become more legitimate over time. That's why I guess if you think of it this way, if you think about businesses, they might say since 1973, since 1955. They don't say since 2017 because that longevity of existence does promote that notion of legitimacy. Now, if you think about our government for a second, um, we don't think that we're going to wake up tomorrow morning, turn on CNN, and find out our government's been dissolved. No, we've got over 200 years of tradition that says otherwise. Now, if we lived in the 1790s and we went down to the local tavern, which was the internet of the day, and we heard that the government had dissolved, that might not have been a big surprise. The Constitution only been in effect for a short period of time. So again, things become more legitimate over time. Secondly, charisma. Now, in the last module, we talked about the different variants of power. One was reference, based on the person, charisma. We're coming back to that concept in a way here. A lot of political scientists will point to certain governments and look at key people as the primary facilitators of the advancement and acceptance and legitimacy of those governments. For us, a lot of political scientists would say, have argued, if it weren't for George Washington, we would not have our government today. No way. George Washington really was so popular amongst everyone, highly respected. It's always been said that had he wanted to be king, he could have just asked for it and they would have made him king. He didn't do that. What happened? He came in, became our first president, served 2 terms, gave immediate legitimacy to this new government through his participation as chief executive. Well, what did he also do? He walked away after 2 terms, helped to keep things settled, start out on a good foot, but then he went home. And in doing so, he in effect said, hey, what is important here isn't me, it's the office in this new government. So he became a part of those beginnings to give it instant legitimacy. I've got here in the bullet point de Gaulle. If you ever study French politics, Charles de Gaulle is a similar figure for France. After World War II, France never quite recovered, and there were even plans to divide France up and absorb France into the other European nations. Charles de Gaulle, who during World War II had led the French resistance, very popular. He came out of retirement 10 years removed from World War II and helped France form its new republic, which is still in existence today. So a lot of people point to Charles de Gaulle as a similar figure in a similar way. If it weren't for him, France may not exist today as we know it. All right. And lastly, law. We keep coming back to this concept. We keep coming back to this notion of constitutionalism, having those rules in place, define what a government can and can't do on the front end. Okay? Having that legal structure, again, promotes legitimacy. You aren't making the rules up as you go along. You have that structure in place. Okay? And think of your own situation personally, whether it's an organization you volunteer with or where you work. When we tend to have more structure in place, and in the case of our government, a legal structure, it does promote more of the acceptance and legitimacy to its members and those around them. Anyway, thank you for listening to this module, and we'll see you in the next one.